This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Sean Cole, but the real star of today's show is the RSeat N1 racing chassis. You can see it here in all its glory. I actually have their monitor stand as well. I'm not reviewing that here today, but I am using it along with the rig. And RSeat, they've been on the scene for a long time now, and I think back all the way to the RSeat Evo. And there's really no comparing that to what we have here today or the rest of the RSeat lineup, including the RS1 and the RS Formula V2. I'm going to warn you right now, this is one serious piece of hardware, and therefore this is going to be a very detailed review, and it's going to take a little while. So sit back, relax, and hopefully enjoy. The RSeat headquarters are in Gabrovo, Bulgaria. This is where all RSeats are made. They reside in a modern-looking, state-of-the-art facility. Both inside and outside, it looks like the kind of place that makes something a bit more high-tech than just sim racing rigs. Every aspect of the RSeat building process is done in-house at this factory. They use a totally automated laser cutter that provides the perfect edges on the steel plates of the RSeat. They bend their own tubing to specific dimensions to be put on their own jigs and welded up by hand, all right there. It is a clean, organized, and spacious place, and much more than I expected from a rig manufacturer. Now let's go ahead and take a brief tour of the RSeat N1 racing chassis, and the first thing you're going to notice is that it's mostly made of steel. It's a combination of large 2-inch tubing and steel plating. The tubing on the lower structure has an elegant or artistic shape to it, and it's reinforced with steel plating in the important areas. This plating is also used to make the mating surfaces of the N1 chassis, like where the upright meets the bottom part of the rig to make a perfect fit and an extremely strong assembly. The upright is also made of this heavy gauge tubing and has an elegant curve to it. The paint on the N1 rig is straight out of a car showroom floor. The silver metallic is very shiny, very smooth, and very consistent over the entire rig and upgrade parts. The wheel deck is made up of multiple pieces of this heavy-duty steel plating and uses 4 heavy bolts to lock it down in place. The wheel deck is pre-drilled to accommodate Logitech, Fanatic, and Thrustmaster wheels. The pedal tray is made with even heavier plate steel, forming 2 sides that allow for multiple different lockdown angles. There are also 2 different sets of these sides, with the second one offering an even higher pedal base if desired. This entire structure is mounted onto seat sliders and allows for independent movement of the pedal tray. The pedal base is also pre-drilled for Logitech, Fanatic, and Thrustmaster pedal sets. It's also big enough to allow for just about any custom pedal set to be installed onto it with ease. The lower base also has 2 seat sliders towards the rear end to hold the entire seat assembly. Like the pedal base, it uses 2 steel plate sides joined together with a cross brace. The seat then attaches to that and has multiple different angles to be locked down in place. The back of the seat is a plastic shell type in a typical race car shape, including the access holes for seat belts. It has a finish in the same color as my rig, the silver metallic, and has an equally high quality finish on it. The seat back is fairly rigid, but will flex if you pull on its edges. Despite the flex, it will hold a driver over 300 pounds. The covering on my rig is the ultra soft Alcantara in black. It fits nicely and has a removable pad on the back and the bottom. And then to finish it off, there's a nicely embroidered RSeat logo on the head of the seat. Overall, this is an aesthetically pleasing, highly adjustable, and very sturdy racing chassis. At the beginning of the show, I said the N1 chassis was a serious piece of hardware, and I meant that in a bunch of different ways. One of them is the fact that it's a modular design, and it comes in many flavors. You can get the N1 chassis as just the chassis itself. Now, with it being so serious, you'd expect it to be expensive, and it is. The base, all on its own, is $1,099 US. Now, you can also get it with a seat. That would be the next step up, and that's a regular covered seat. Same type of seat, but with a regular covering instead of the Alcantara, and that's going to set you back $1,249. The next step up from that is exactly what we have here. We've got the chassis, we've got the Alcantara seat, and that actually drives the price quite a bit, but it is so soft. If you've ever felt it on wheels, you know what I'm talking about. Now imagine that being what's underneath you. Yes, it can be a little bit warm, but all seats end up being warm in the summer. It's very soft, it's pretty durable, long-lasting, everything you'd want out of it. Again, $1549 at that price point. Then you get into the upgrades, and we'll go into those a little bit later. You also have another option where you get a D-Box. You can add a motion system with 1.5 inches of travel for $16,999, or 3 inches of travel for $19,999. Or the ultimate of 6 inches of lift, 6 inches of travel on this rig, but it's gonna set you back nearly $30,000 if you happen to have that laying around. Now all of a sudden, $1,249 for the regular covered seat seems like a screaming deal. So we have the fully loaded model of the N1 chassis with all of the upgrades, which later I'm going to go through in a little more detail, but real quick we'll go over the upgrades and the pricing for each, starting off with the shifter handbrake upgrade, which goes for an additional $129. There's also the keyboard mouse tray upgrade kit for $129, the butt kicker upgrade kit for $99 US. Then there's the speaker upgrade kit for $119. And then finally, the tablet and button box upgrade kit for $119. For our test today, we're using the Alcantara model in silver and black with all of the upgrades. Totaled up, you're looking at $2,144 US and shipping, which somehow ends up only being $79. I don't understand that because the boxes were huge and they weigh a ton. $79 for shipping is a deal in its own. Now, they are doing a special offer in honor of this review right now, and they are offering one free upgrade with the purchase of any racing chassis and monitor stand. This is not restricted to the N1 chassis, but any rig, any monitor stand, and pick your free accessory. This is not a normal discount code, and in order to cash in on it, you need to first go to RSeat.net and then go to the store for your region, pick a rig, pick a monitor stand, and then add them to your cart. Then at checkout, in the notes section of your order, you must type in Simpit Special. I want my free upgrade, and then name your upgrade. It can be a shifter mount, a keyboard tray, butt kicker mount, anything you want. The offer is good for 1 month. When delivered to your home, the RSeat N1 racing chassis comes in 2 boxes. It ends up weighing like 200 pounds. It's a pain in the butt to move it in. You're gonna probably need a little bit of help to move the boxes to where you're gonna unpack it. But when getting a rig that's worth $2,000, the first thing I'm thinking is, I hope it got here okay. I mean, that is a lot of weight, a lot of stuff in 2 boxes, and I'm just praying that when I open it, it's gonna be undamaged. But I'm gonna tell you, the guys at RSeat, they did an amazing job of packing. Everything was wrapped individually, completely sectioned off in a way that it can't hurt itself, and it ended up taking me over an hour to unpack the boxes. But everything showed up unscratched, no dents or dings, and not missing a single piece. The assembly of the N1 chassis was actually a breeze. It came with easy to follow instructions, all of the tools that I needed, and a bunch of extra hardware as well, with the main rig taking me out 1 hour from start to finish to complete. Now there's one thing that I really enjoyed about building the N1 chassis, and I'm thinking about the best way to describe this, but when you bring it out of the box, you are constantly removing the bolts from the nuts that are pre-installed into the chassis. That means when you go to assemble it, you actually know which bolts go in which holes because they're already there. It also guarantees that the threads on those bolts or those threaded nuts that are installed are clean. So you know when you pull it out, it's gonna go back in. If you're getting any friction, it means you need to move things around a little bit because it should just go in that easy. That made things really nice, gave me a certain amount of confidence, and it also means that RSeat pre-checked the threads themselves and they know it worked. So I also got all 5 of the upgrades. They came in their own individual boxes. Everything was individually wrapped as well on those, had no scratches, dents, dings, or any damage whatsoever. Each of these also came with their own instructions and hardware, and they are all very easy to put onto the rig just following the instructions. All of that is covered in our rig assembly videos. We have 3 different videos to choose from, and you can see all of those on our website or our YouTube channel. When it comes to a rig review, there are certain aspects of the review that I focus most of my attention. For a sim racer, things like driving position, rigidity, compatibility, overall comfort, these are really important topics when it comes to a sim rig. So let's start off there and go through some of these categories. The RSeat N1 racing chassis is a GT or rally style driving position. It has a lot of adjustability within that original design shape, but it is much more upright than a Formula style rig and at the same time more extended than sitting at a desk. Starting at the pedals, on the sliders, you have front to back adjustment of about 6 inches. I already mentioned the angle adjustability of the pedal tray. It goes anything from flat to raised 3.5 inches in the rear. Plus, the additional set of sides raises everything another inch front and back. In addition to that, there are 4 different holes to mount the rails to, offering another 4 inches of adjustability front to back. That is just the adjustability of the pedals alone. The seat then has its own adjustments, starting with seat sliders, allowing for about 6 inches. In addition to that, there are 4 different holes to mount the rails to, offering another 2 inches of adjustability front to back. There are also 4 different slots on the front side of the seat mount, and 3 on the rear, offering several different mounting angles. The seat angle is fixed, and there is no adjustment for that angle. And then finally comes the wheel deck. It has a sophisticated dual plate sliding design. This offers about 6 inches up and down movement and about 2 inches of front to back, and deck angles anywhere from negative or below flat to quite set back. That is a lot of adjustability, and in the end offers a perfect GT driving position for me. When it comes to your equipment or your componentry, the RSeat N1 chassis does a great job there as well. It comes ready to accept any wheel, pedal, shifter combo from any of the big 3 manufacturers. But its compatibility doesn't end there. That pedal base, it's heavy duty and it's really large. It's big enough that you could put just about any kind of brake set on there, whether it's a load cell, hydraulic type, anything that's going to take monster pressure, this pedal base is going to be able to handle it. Just a few drilled holes away from holding any pedal set, really. Now the wheel deck is also very strong and secure. And it is also adjustable enough to get the angle you need for any wheel. However, it is a little small, about the size of a G29 base. The actual measurements are about 10 inches wide and about 6 inches front to back. With a few holes drilled, it should accept just about any of the direct drive wheels out there as well. Now that we have all of our equipment mounted up to the rig, we're ready to go. Let's talk about the overall comfort, what it's like driving the rig, and how it really held up under a driving load. The RSeat N1 chassis adjustments allowed me to get exactly where I like to be for a GT driving position. RSeat claims that the chassis will fit drivers from about 4'2" to about 6'7". For me as a smaller driver, I already have the N1 chassis maxed out or minimized out, depending on how you want to look at it. As I mentioned, I have a perfect driving position for me, but I do have the seat as far forward as I can get it. I have remounted the sliders in the most forward position, and I have it all the way forward on the sliders. On the opposite side, I have the wheel extended as far out as it can go. Anyone smaller than me also using a Logitech wheel will want a pillow behind them. This is also where having such an adjustable pedal base comes in handy. Regardless of where I put the seat, the pedals were very easy to get in the right spot. Now, also focusing on the seating position, I have the seat reclined as far back as it will tilt. I don't think I'd actually put more angle on it, but for those looking for a reclined seat, you might need to drill some other holes to set the seat back a touch more. Luckily for me, I was within the boundaries of the RSeat chassis and I was completely comfortable, and I have no doubt in my mind that it's going to extend all the way out for a much, much taller driver. Now, when it came to driving, that's when the RSeat N1 chassis really started to shine. It was completely rigid. very strong, and had almost zero wobble. When driving normally, I never noticed even the slightest of wiggles from the rig whatsoever. When I really cranked on the wheel just to see if I could make it move, I got a very slight hint of a sway. But the movement seemed to be the entire rig and never gave me a feeling of a flexy or wobbly wheel deck. Very well done, RSeat. This was also true on the accessories themselves. As I drove, the keyboard and mouse stayed stably on their platforms, and as I hammered through the gears, there was hardly a wobble at all from the shifter mount. Now, I've spent a lot of time showing you the rig. I've talked about the assembly, talked about the adjustability, compatibility, getting it dialed in, what it was like driving it a little bit. And with all that, I haven't even gotten to the components yet, or the upgrades if we want to call them. So let's go ahead and go through those one by one real quick before we finish things off. Let's start things off with the shifter handbrake assembly, which again goes for $129. The kit installs very easily like the rest of the rig. It bolts to the seat assembly so that it moves with the driver's change of seat position. The main arm of the shifter can be moved forward and backward about 6.5 inches. It can also be rotated inward and outward to change the distance from the seat. And from there, both the shifter plate and the handbrake angles can be adjusted independently. The entire assembly can be put on either the left hand or right hand side of the rig. The shifter plate is pre-drilled to accommodate the Logitech, Thrustmaster, and Fanatic shifters. It will even work with the DSD shifter as well. The handbrake section comes back towards the driver and has been built to accommodate rectangular shaped handbrakes. I know it works with the Fanatic handbrake and likely the DSD one as well. But the most important thing is you have plenty of space to work with, and you're probably just a couple of holes being drilled away from mounting just about any shifter on the market. Now, there was one thing I did find a little annoying about the shifter mount, and that was the bolt head sticking up on the plate side. It limits the plate's usage, and a couple of recessed bolts here would have been real nice. Next up is the keyboard mouse tray upgrade kit, and I have to tell you, this is one of the coolest keyboard mouse trays that I've ever used on any kind of rig. It has a 3-piece arm that is the same heavy tubing as the main rig, and this bolts down to the rig with a very large bolt. The connections on the arm are torqued from the factory, and in my install video I took one of these apart and ruined that predetermined amount of tension on them. The 3-piece arm articulates in a way that allows you to adjust the angle and distance from you with a simple push or pull of the tray. It also swings out of the way nicely to make getting in and out of the rig very easy. The deck angle is also adjustable, and there's a cool lip that goes all the way around the tray to help hold your gear in place. This upgrade is rock solid, and it looks like it belongs on the rig to begin with. The keyboard section of the tray will hold a keyboard up to about 20 inches long and 8 inches tall. The mouse tray is a 7.5-inch diameter circle. Next up is the butt kicker mount. This mount is a serious beast and weighs a hefty amount. But that is good because it also forms a cross brace for the seat and allows multiple butt kickers to be used. It is very straightforward. Bolt or clamp on your butt kickers, install it under the seat with the 4 bolts provided, and you're shaking. And that takes us to the speaker mount upgrade kit. This kit comes in 4 pieces and also mounts very easily to the rig. The front mount handles the front 2 speakers and holds them down low by the floor. The center speaker mount goes right behind the wheel deck and is aesthetically integrated into the rig design. And then on the back, a shaped plate on each side of the lower seat mount for the rear speakers. The positioning of the speakers is perfect, and it works very well with small satellite-style speakers. There's a mounting hole on the back for each speaker if they happen to line up. In my case, I just used a little bit of double-sided tape, put it on the speaker, mounted it to the mount, or stuck it to the mount, ended up working quite well, very simple. Now, the final upgrade is also very cool. That is the button box and tablet mount. For starters, it also mounts into the rig in a very sturdy way. 4 bolts hold another piece of that 2-inch tubing that goes on the bottom of the wheel deck area. This arm extends off to the right side of the rig and then has the mounting assembly attached there. This assembly can then swing left or right to the desired position. There's a little bit of adjustability to the angle for both the tablet and button box mounts independently. The lower section is designed for a button box, and it slides up and down to grab onto the box with rubber pieces on both the top and bottom of the mount. It will hold a button box up to about 9 inches tall. The tablet mount works the same way by adjusting up and down and sandwiching the tablet. This mount will hold a tablet up to 8.5 inches tall or wide. I found it to work really well with my mini tablet, but when I tried to use my phone, it actually was too small to hold it this way. It would hold it that way. But you know what? I ended up just putting it on there, and the top was still sitting about that high up, not even contacting it. It ended up not even falling because the rig is so solid. Both button box and the tablet mount were also rock solid and held my components in place, locked down and easy to use. All of the upgrades were well thought out and really added to the rig. So I think I've told you just about everything that I can think of about the rig. I mean, between the assembly videos, this review, I can't think of much else to tell you. You've probably already started to formulate your own opinion. I mean, I could go on and on about things in the driving experience. I mean, but it really comes down to compatibility, rigidity, comfort. I mean, I'll tell you this, when I sit in this seat, I contact it all the way from about the back of my neck, all the way through my lower back, all the way across my legs. Complete contact. That's really good, but I can't tell you that everybody's going to feel that way. It isn't as upright as a super racing seat, but it is definitely upright compared to a lot of seats out there that can recline with a hinge point. So that's one thing that definitely, I mean, I want to stress that, but again, I had a perfect driving position. So really, to bring things to a close, it's time to move on to the good, the not so good, and the bottom line. And I like to start things off with the good, and we do have a lot of them when it comes to the RSeat N1 racing chassis, starting off with its rigidity. This thing is so rock solid. The rig is a beast when it comes to strength. It has so little flex or movement and is so strong that I don't see it developing any creaks or wiggles. It is built to last. Next, adjustability. Endless amounts of it, including the upgrades. Compatibility. Out of the box, it's ready for the big three and more. It's beautiful. I love when art meets function, and it's clear the RSeat was built with that in mind. It's elegant, it's curvaceous, it looks like someone really loves their rig. It's comfortable. It's got a great driving position with a soft and comfortable seat. The modular design, I just love this about the rig. You can add on the upgrades later, buy them as you can afford them. It's sitting there ready and waiting for the upgrades. The other thing, even though it's sitting there waiting for the upgrades, it doesn't look like it. They're completely hidden away, so when you look at the base chassis, you don't look like you're missing any pieces. The next thing is the finish. The overall finish on this is beautiful. The paint, the metal's edges, the welds, the seat covering, even the hardware itself is all very nice and looks and feels very high-end. The upgrades, being able to finish off a rig without drilling holes, adding clamps, adding universal mounts. I love the keyboard, I love the button box, and the shifter mounts. And the desktop application. The keyboard and mouse tray actually will move right over your lap. I can slide the seat back and do my desktop stuff pretty comfortably from the rig. And last is the warranty. RSeat is going to back this rig for 3 years. Now let's move on to the not so good. And I do have a few items on this list for the N1 racing chassis. Now I had to think, and some of them are pretty nitpicky, so let's go through them and you can judge for yourself, starting with the price. This rig is expensive. There's no arguing that this is one of the most expensive rigs on the market. It's very heavy. From the moment you get the boxes until every time you try to move it, you will remember how much this rig weighs. Even on the sliding feet, I have to push really hard just to slide it around. And for a big move, it's going to require help and maybe even taking it apart a little bit. Next up is its overall size or its footprint. This is a very big rig. I've seen motion simulators that take up about the same amount of space. So if you're in a tiny room or an apartment, this is going to become the focal point of that room. Next up is the minimum size, which I am going to question. I have the seat all the way forward, and with the pedals, it's no problem. but if the wheel were any farther away, it would be. I'd need a cushion or something behind me building up the distance. Seat angle. I'd like to see more freedom to recline more. I'm happy with my position, but some others might want a little more and still be considered a GT position. Next up, and again, this is kind of ticky-tack, the shifter adjustment is somewhat linked. And by that I mean when I bend the arm in and out to go closer or away from me, it also affects the height. Or if I was trying to adjust the height of the shifter by doing that, it's also going to move it away. Now I do have some adjustment, I do have some freedom with the shifter top mount, but it's something that still needs to be taken into consideration. Next up is that the seat sliders and the pedal sliders were a bit stiff and take a little bit of pushing hard on. Now it's something I do expect to lighten up over time. And I think that's about it. Now, if I really wanted to get nitpicky, I can tell you that the speaker mounts of all the upgrades kind of feel like an afterthought, and the rear ones actually stick out. So I already have hit my leg on them once, and that's something you have to kind of look out for a little bit. But that is really about it. So let's move on to the bottom line. And the bottom line is this. The RSeat N1 racing chassis is one of my all-time favorite rigs that I have ever tested on the show. It meets so many of the categories that are critical to me, with the one exception being the price. And quite honestly, for that price, it better be one of the best rigs I ever tested. But I really think the RSeat N1 goes beyond that a bit in several different ways. It's such a well thought out design. To make it so cool looking and so perfectly functional at the same time is just awesome. This rig will impress your friends, it will look good in your race room, and it will be a pleasure to drive in. Granted, it's not perfect, and at that price point, it's not for everyone, but RSeat has taken the whatever it takes approach to building the perfect rig. You have all of your controls all the way around you. You're perfectly tucked into this rig. And the end result is a cockpit like a real GT driver, with a comfortable yet aggressive position allowing you to really get on the wheel. Your extra controls at your side or out in front of you. And there's very little that I would change about this rig unless I had literally built it for myself. Now there's one thing I want to say about the GT driving position. I really like the GT position. It allows me, like I said, to really get on that wheel. I can drive aggressively and confidently. I'm a little bit more comfortable, and my endurance is better than when I'm in a formula driving position, but that is very personal. As you can imagine, doing these reviews takes a lot of time. It actually takes me weeks of driving just to formulate an opinion. It takes me weeks just to film all the various different camera angles and all the close-up footage, build the rig, all that kind of stuff. And I have to tell you that I do learn more and more throughout the process. Also, I'm constantly in communication with the manufacturer, finding out things. Like, in the rig build review, you found out that I actually made a mistake on putting this arm in and it adjusted the torque. Well, one thing I want to mention, I think that's right and wrong, but you can actually change the torque to make it turn the way you want. So I actually tightened and loosened these assemblies in order to make the keyboard swing exactly how I wanted to do that. So that's something really important. And while we're on that topic, on the button box, I actually mounted the crossbar upside down the way it mounts to the main rig. It actually goes the other way. Had a little trouble getting it in with the washers, so I did it without the washers, but it did slightly change the angle that this sits back at, the button box and tablet mount. So that's something really important. Another thing I want to mention is my button box is certainly my favorite of all time Ricmotech box. It's also a little unconventional. It has the USB plug on the back. Well, this mount is really intended for a side type USB plug-in, and if you look at their list of supported button boxes, it does prefer a side, not even a top or bottom, because it would be in the way there. So I have to drill a hole to let my USB connection go through so I can mount the button box just the way I want it. Now, another thing I really did learn, and this is a big one, I talked about my driving position, how I was maxed out, or minimized out, I should say. And by that I mean I was in a comfortable position, but as you can see, my arms are a little straightened out. And that's not exactly how I always like to drive. Actually, to be fair, this is where it was. And this is one of my driving positions, but every once in a while, I want to be a little more aggressive, maybe go one click closer, and I didn't have that freedom. The other thing is, maybe I have someone come over who's shorter than I am. They want to enjoy the rig as well, or as RSeat claims, it'll handle a much, much smaller driver. Well, I learned one thing. If I took off and reversed the entire lower mount, the whole lower assembly, and remounted the seat, well, way close. As you can see, I am closer than I would ever want the rig. It would handle a driver much, much smaller than me, but more importantly, it gets me to that same driving position or anything in that ballpark that I want. So I now have some freedom of movement. Like I said, the pedals always go where you want them to go. Now, the one thing is, when I do it this way, it sort of blocks the shifter's freedom. So I don't have as much travel with the shifter, but I was able to get it right where I wanted. The other thing is, now the butt kicker mount would be turned around the other way, and I think you could only do a puck style, and that apparatus is going to block you from getting the seat adjuster a little bit, but that's not very big deal. So, as you can see, that cured one of my cons on the list, and if you're a taller driver, you don't need to reverse it, but it definitely took care of one of those cons, and again, just a great driving position in this rig. Got it so dialed in just for me. Now, one thing I want to say before I end this entire show, I want to thank my friend Crassy, who really is the one who got me to do this review. And you probably know him if you're active in forums, because the guy is all over the place and he's very active. But if you have any questions about the RSeat N1 chassis or any of the RSeats, he's the guy to ask. And the best place to find him for questions on the seat is at the RSeat Owners Facebook page. That page is where people who own various different RSeats are posting pictures, asking questions, and if you're looking advice on whether a certain wheel or a certain shifter or handbrake is gonna work, you're probably gonna find people who've used those things on their rigs at that Facebook page. Another thing that's great about joining that page, getting help from the guys, and going ahead and finding things about the rig, is that they're also doing a monthly drawing for a free upgrade. As long as you post some pictures of your RSeat, you're entered into that drawing. Well, that's going to about do it, and I have to tell you, it was quite a pleasure bringing you the RSeat N1 chassis review. I know it was long, but I hope it was thorough. I didn't want to leave a single stone unturned on such an important review. Now, if you do have any questions, if there is something that I missed, I want you to email me at sean@thesimpit.com. I'll answer your questions directly, and if I get enough of them, I'll do a follow-up video where I just answer those questions. So that's really going to do it for today. We didn't get to the monitor stand. That's going to be another review. It's something you can look forward to in the not too distant future. Until next time, this is the Simpit. I'm Sean Cole, and I'll see you on the track.